Welcome to the Terrible Podcast with your hosts from SteelersDepot.com, where you can find all your latest and greatest Steelers news. It's Dave Bryan and Alex Kozora, always lit, talking Steelers. And now, here's Dave and Alex.
Welcome to the Terrible Podcast, Season 16, Episode 163. He's Dave Bryan. I'm Alex Kozora, SteelersDepot.com. Thanks for being back with us this Wednesday, Steelers Nation, as we are getting closer and closer to the start of training camp and trying to squeeze out the last 2 weeks of things to talk about. So, take an especially slow news cycle. Lamar, if you could make some things happen, that would be terrific. But until then, Dave, how you doing?
All right. Happy Wednesday to you. I believe Thursday is termed the slowest day in professional sports, because obviously you got the All-Star break going on right now, and NBA's downtime, and NHL off season, and nothing going on in the NFL right now. I suppose we do have a World Cup match going on later today, but nothing with the World Cup on Thursday there, and baseball doesn't return until, I don't think, Friday there. Did you watch any of the All-Star game whatsoever?
Not a second of it. No Pirates were playing, so I tuned out.
All right, good on you. I wasted my time watching that. Boy, you think they could use a few more in-game interviews there. It's really, really awkward and kind of seemed forced within that, and not a lot of hitting going on in that game. If you love pitching, I suppose you had that there. But I made a mistake of sitting and taking that in.
Did you watch the Derby? Did you end up watching the Derby?
No. I did not watch any of the Derby, and it sounded like that ended up being fairly interesting overall. So I did not take in that. So I will watch the World Cup game, I think, later today. Pay attention to that while I get some more writing done in my 90 and 30 series. And speaking of that, we've got I think we're going to try to knock out about 9 names, the next 9 on the 90 and 30 series. And as you mentioned there, not a lot going on right now, with a little less than 2 weeks to go until the start of training camp.
What there is to talk about is ESPN's continued top 10 list going through the position groups. No Steeler has made the top 10 since, actually, no Steeler has made the top 10 at all, correct? Throughout this entire cycle?
What was Cameron Heyward? Cameron Heyward was...
No, he was not,
outside?
Yeah, he was in the others receiving votes, not even an honorable mention. There's been a couple honorable mentions.
Where was TJ Watt? Wasn't he
I'm sorry, you're right. Yeah. TJ Watt was 7th on that list. Right. He's the only Steeler. I'm trying to think back. But anyway, I say that to say that at receiver and linebacker, no Steeler making the top 10 either, but Patrick Queen and also DK Metcalf at least getting their name on in the article. Queen as an honorable mention, Metcalf in the also receiving votes, which is a step below the honorable mentions. With Queen, there was, I think, an AFC executive talking about his talent, but his inconsistent play, something that we've noted quite a bit of, and there was no commentary on Metcalf, but for him to be outside, say, the top 20 of that list is probably pretty reasonable.
And I guess the NFL Network's top 100 players list continues on, and correct me if I'm wrong, I think Jalen Ramsey's been the only one so far in that, right?
Correct. We still would expect Cam Heyward and TJ Watt to be on that list. I'm not sure where. About Lamar Jackson getting slotted at number 69. I was pretty surprised by how low that rating was, even off the injury last season. Certainly calls into question how this process exactly works, but there was that certainly stirred the pot in Raven circles.
Yeah, absolutely. What was he a year ago? Number 2, I think?
2. Yeah.
So 2 to 69. I mean, look, I understand dropping him. Missed several games with injury, and obviously I don't even think he hit 3,000 passing yards last year, and his touchdown pass passing touchdown total was around half of what it was this season prior. So I certainly understand dropping him down, but that far, I mean, 67 spots. I mean, that felt a little. Look, I mean, we've talked about this since the inception of the top 100 and all. You know, how many players actually vote on that? What does it look like? I mean, I wish there was more transparency involved in that. There never will be. Heck, even they know it's kind of not the same thing it was when it initially came out, because they used to hold there used to be episodes on the NFL Network that they would click down. I don't remember, was it 5 or 10 at a time, something like that, and but now it's just basically post on Twitter and summations on NFL.com. So it's ranking season. It's something to get everybody through, I guess, and give conversation, spur on conversation at this time of year. But I think I speak for most of the listeners and most of the fans of the NFL out there. It feels like it's about time to get this summer over with and get these teams into training camp to have some real football to talk about.
Here. Where do you think DK Metcalf ranks on a top receiver list on this ESPN list? He'd be outside their top 15, probably in that 20-something range, late teens, early 20s. Does that sound about right? I'm not asking you to map out the whole list, but where do you just eyeball him in terms of the best receivers in football?
Yeah, definitely outside the top 10 right now at this point. And how much of that is his fault versus the offense that he played in last year versus, Aaron Rodgers and how he was getting rid of the ball so quick last year. I mean, look, if you were to, I don't know, go through this player by player, it feels like he would still at worst be, I don't know, 15 overall off the top of my head.
Let me ask it maybe a simpler way. In the AFC North, where does he rank? You have in Cincinnati, Jamar Chase, T. Higgins. In Baltimore, Zay Flowers, Cleveland, Jerry Jeudy, also some rookies. Where does Metcalf rank in division?
I think I would put him obviously behind Chase and Higgins right now, specifically because of the offense and the quarterback that they both get to play with. And, obviously Jamar Chase is a very talented player, and Higgins a great compliment to him as well, too. I don't know if I would rank any other AFC wide receiver ahead of DK.
Not Zay Flowers? He's coming off a big year.
Nah, I still think one for one, which one strikes the fear in me more?
Yeah.
I think it would be Metcalf, even coming off the season that he had last season compared to what Zay did. I still would much rather face, I think, if I was defensive coordinator, scheme up against Zay Flowers than I would against Metcalf, even at this point here. So hopefully that rings true, and Metcalf can get back to at least being 1,000-yard receiver. I think he is still capable of that. I think a lot of that's going to depend on, obviously the way Aaron Rodgers plays and the Steelers' ability to push football down the field. I mean, he obviously didn't miss that. If you would factor in the 2 games that DK was suspended for last season, would he have cracked 1,000 yards? I tend to think not, but still would have been interesting to have him in those 2 games to see what would have happened there. And I think it bodes well for him, at least to have a guy like Michael Pittman Jr. In town playing opposite him this season, and obviously Mike McCarthy and the reunification with Aaron Rodgers, you would hope would help the passing game to some degree this season. So yeah, I think Metcalf's still a top 15 wide receiver in the NFL. I think he's probably the 3rd best in the AFC right now, and he's going to have to work to retain both those rankings in 2026.
Okay, fair enough. I think maybe pound for pound talent wise, Metcalf is such a unicorn. He might be ahead of Zay Flowers, but Flowers has been really productive. Now you could talk about offensive scheme and quarterback play, although Lamar Jackson's injury last year had Zay Flowers catching from backups, for part of that time. So I think I put Metcalf 4th on that list until he kind of has a Metcalf-like season on the box score. I mean, Zay Flowers, 86 catches, 1,200 yards, 5 touchdowns, over 14 yards per catch last year. pretty impressive, really good route runner. Obviously, different style, the way he wins, different body type, and just skill set. But Metcalf certainly can make some big plays. Excited to see him in year two. Excited to see the continuity between Rodgers and Metcalf. But is he a great route runner? Not really. The hand's a little suspect sometimes. He'll drop a couple. So I'll put him fourth on that list.
All right. Well, while we're talking about Metcalf, I guess he's going to be in the first group of three. So maybe we can run these in reverse in the 90 and 30. While we're already on the subject there, he caught 59 passes for 850 yards and 6 touchdowns on 99 total targets last season. He chipped in 2 more receptions for 42 yards in the playoff loss to Houston. His average depth of target was just 10.5 yards. That's the lowest of his NFL career to date. That obviously was a byproduct of Aaron Rodgers and him getting the ball out quick and not pushing the football down the field. Metcalf also only had 2 100-yard receiving games in 2025. He played just 776 offensive snaps, the fewest amount of snaps he's played in a single season since entering the NFL in 2019, and obviously missed those final 2 games because of the altercation with the fan in Detroit, which hopefully he'd learn a lesson from. And obviously Metcalf came to the Steelers last offseason via a trade with the Seattle Seahawks in March, and then they immediately signed him to a huge 4-year contract extension. So technically, did the Steelers get their money's worth out of Metcalf in 2025? I think the short answer to that would probably be no, and that needs to change in 2026. Once again, even had he not been suspended for 2 games last season, I think there's a good chance he still wouldn't have hit 1,000 receiving yards for the season, but that can be debated. When you look forward in the outlook of 2026, the addition of Michael Pittman Jr. Should help Metcalf overall. And additionally, this team going out and getting Germie Bernard in the second round of the draft, you hope to bring him along quickly and potentially part of a lot more 11 personnel type situations. Hopefully that will help Metcalf's overall production. The key factor within this season for the Steelers and obviously any NFL team is the quarterback play, and specifically in Pittsburgh when it comes to Aaron Rodgers, because as we've talked a lot about, he didn't push football down the field last season with any regularity, and on top of that, he got rid of the football extremely fast. You have to figure those 2 facts, along with the team really not having a really, really good option outside other than Metcalf, played a role in his average depth of target and his completion percentage for being the lowest in his NFL career to date. And now with Mike McCarthy in Pittsburgh, he's now charged with getting his passing game, at least better than it was in 2025, and us seeing more explosive plays, and Aaron Rodgers hopefully being able to push the football down the field a little bit more with regularity there. In my opinion, he absolutely needs to hit at least 1,000 yards receiving, and feels like touchdowns are always negotiable, but it'd be nice to see 7 touchdowns in 2026, if not more. I think I firmly believe that if he can remain healthy, you're looking at probably, 70 to 80 receptions for Metcalf in 2026. It doesn't seem like a huge chore overall, and you would think him being able to play at least, around 820 offensive snaps also doesn't sound like a big ask as well. So a lot of this is going to revolve around, the Steelers' ability to run the football, the use of play action, Aaron Rodgers' ability to hold on to the football a little bit more, the impact a guy like Michael Pittman can have when it comes to Pittman. But I think at a minimum, we should expect a better season in 2026 from Metcalf than he had in 2025. I don't think that's a huge reach in saying that overall. And the Steelers definitely need to get their money's worth out of him in 2026. And once again, I think you're looking at 70 to 80 receptions, maybe around 7 touchdowns, and surely over 1,000 yards, or at least you would hope.
It's probably a little tough to describe, but how would you categorize the chemistry between Aaron Rodgers and DK Metcalf last year?
Clunky.
And do you think that's just a natural two new guys coming together trying to make it work?
Yeah, that part of the Arthur Smith offense, and the just the newness of those two guys playing together, and having to rely so much on Metcalf yards after the catch as opposed to being able to use them a little bit more vertically down the field. I think it's just a combination of a lot of things in there overall. And it goes without saying they really didn't have a decent option really opposite of DK Metcalf. I mean, you got to a point where you had Adam Thielen obviously in there, and Roman Wilson could never get footing in this offense last year, and it felt clunky overall when it came to the passing game. You would expect a lot of that to be ironed out, specifically between Rodgers and Metcalf after playing together for one season.
Do you think Metcalf will be fed the ball more this year because Arthur Smith's system was sort of spread the ball around naturally, philosophically? Do you think that'll be a change where Metcalf really will be the focal point, or will it be more of Rodgers just throwing to the open receiver or the best possible option on his pre-snap look?
I don't think. I think more than anything, when Metcalf, you just want to go into the games and getting him involved early in them. I don't think. Depending on obviously who you're playing and personnel and coverages and things along those, I don't think you specifically just try to run the offense through him.
Sure, but you're saying get him involved early, which I think suggests some sort of let's focus on Metcalf, make sure he's getting some touches.
Yeah, at least in early in the games, first series or so, getting him involved in the game, I think obviously could have benefits in there. And look, you want a guy like that, a veteran that's used to getting the ball as much as he's gotten over his career, to not be a spectator so much. And I think I just think that should be the main focus with him. Not that he's the type player that if you didn't get him the ball in the first quarter or only twice in the first half of a game, that he'd go George Pickens on you and you have to worry about that. But I do think, look, these guys have big egos. They want to be involved in all. You just not you know. Do you need to try to manufacture something up, I guess, in a script early on? So you don't want to throw to a guy that's not open on top of it there and force something and result in a negative play. But I just think more than anything, instead of the offense running through him, I think everything else should come organically outside of just trying to get him involved maybe in the first series of a game.
Sure, there's a balance there, and if he's not open, he's not open. But I think the intent has to be getting this guy the ball more frequently last year, where it felt like for long stretches he would disappear, where the offense just really was not even looking his way. And I know there's a complexity just based on what defenses are doing, if they're rolling coverage or they're playing shell coverage, as Rodgers talked about. But Rodgers' effort and McCarthy's aim certainly will be finding ways to free him up when defenses want to double him and bracket him and take away the deep ball, whether that's more stacks and bunches, diversifying the route tree, just creative uses for him. This is your best offensive weapon. This is a supreme talent in terms of his, just kind of God-given ability. His size, his speed is rare. We all saw the Minnesota Vikings doubling 80-yard touchdown, the way that he can turn on the juice in the open field, the way few guys of his size can. And so you have to really make sure you have a concerted effort to get this guy the football, be the leading actor in your offense, because you're paying him to do that and the talent warrants it.
Look, just looking at raw completion percentages versus targets is a huge no-no without context. But the fact that he caught just 59 passes on 99 total targets, especially when you look at the average target distance and Rodgers' average target distance for the season. It's not like there was a lot of go deep down the field, more than 15 air yards per attempt when it comes to Metcalf. So it lets you know just off of all those factors there that those two weren't on the same page enough. It'd be different if you're talking about 59 completed passes on 99 total targets. If a lot of these were deep down the field, because obviously your chances of completing balls deeper down the field are lower than closer to the line of scrimmage. So that in and of itself, when you can kind of add context to the completion percentage, lets you know that something was very off last season between quarterback and wide receiver.
Sure. So, any other final thoughts on Metcalf? If he doesn't have a big year, how much, I don't want to say panic, but how much sort of concern is there about the trade that Pittsburgh made for him and the contract that gave him along with it?
Yeah, I think the quarterback play is going to have to be factored into that. You know,
Hmm.
I think that's going to play a big role. Are we going to be looking at it as Rodgers just couldn't push the football down the field again? Was he getting the ball out quickly? Was Metcalf not winning, not getting himself open? I think a lot of factors will go in the way of determining if you know especially moving forward into 2027, if a guy like Metcalf is worth earning the type money that he's going to be set to earn. So it's just going to be one of those bigger picture type things to look at after the season there. I mean, if we're seeing a repeat of, let's say he has I don't know, 70 reception, the same ratio of completion percentage on a higher number of targets, and yet we're still seeing the average depth of target equal to, or possibly even lower than what caused that, and what kind of role did Metcalf play in that?
What route do you think Metcalf was most successful on this past year? And I asked that not knowing the answer. Probably a good question. I should fire over to our Clayton Eckert. What route do you think he had the most productivity on?
Oh man, it just feels like the kind of the quick game, the slants and all like that.
Hmm.
I don't know. I could probably look that up real
Or
quick
it's
here.
either slant or go route.
Yeah.
One of the two, I would I would guess. Maybe more the slant. Obviously, the 80-yard touchdown we just referenced came off of a slant. But I'm just curious on kind of what that route tree of success looks like for DK Metcalf.
Let me see if I can pull the numbers as I'm logged in here right now in Sports Info Solutions last year. I guess we can go by route here. Slant for the Steelers last season as a whole. Metcalf, 16 targets on slants, 10 receptions, 2 drops, 178 receiving yards on that. Let's see, comebacks. How many did he have there? I got to sort this on each one. They're not.
Yeah, I would.
There
They're not
weren't
many.
many of that.
Just look at go routes. We don't have to go through the every single route. Just to look at slants and goes because those are probably the favorites.
All right, let's see the go fly category last season. 30 routes run, 10 targets, 4 catchable, 2 receptions, 77 yards.
Mm. Yeah, you got to get more out of the go routes. I know again that you may have gotten that shell coverage last year, and I think maybe Metcalf dropped one or two of those opportunities. The hands a little suspect, not a strength of his game, but got to get more too deep. There was the one against Baltimore, I think, right sideline they hit, but there's just got to be more deep ball with Metcalf and Rodgers this year.
He had no receptions on dig routes last season. That's got to change for sure. You would expect it to. Let's see, corner routes. Where was he? No receptions on corners. Yeah, just what about the
The
post, I
post,
guess?
yeah.
Yeah.
Let's kind of get the deep route, the 7, 8, 9 routes. We got 2 for the deep ball for the 9 route. We got 0 on the 7 route, the corner flag route. How many on?
One reception on the post.
How many yards?
22 yards. Let's
Man,
see.
so
How about out routes?
well, yeah, I don't want to go through every
All right.
single route, but the point is on your vertical routes in your conventional route tree 1 through 9, he had 3 receptions last year for a guy that I don't know what the numbers looked like before. I know you're not going to catch 20 vertical routes in
Right.
most cases unless you're Randy Moss, but 3 is a very seemingly poor number.
Right. I mean, that goes back to the inability of this team to push football down the
Yeah.
field, which obviously, that I mean, this just, verifies, the big concern going into this season when it comes to Rodgers and whoever is out there catching the balls from him.
Are we able to look at what he did in 2024 in Seattle because it's a little more apples to apples when he played in 15 games? He did have a couple more receptions, 66, but I'm just curious to see what that, I assume, drop off was from 24 to 25 in terms of the 7, 8, 9 routes. How many receptions he had combined?
All right. So tell me the routes that you're wanting added up here. What, the post,
Post, corner, and fly go route in 2024 as a member of the Seattle Seahawks, where he played in 15 games, as he did last year because of that suspension. And of course, whenever he was suspended, especially in that Browns game, you felt his absence, where this passing game really tanked against Cleveland in their good secondary.
all right, let me see. Go, post,
So we get 3. I'm just stalling here as you
and
search.
corner. Okay.
Yeah, post, go, corner. 3 in Pittsburgh last year. I forgot the number of yards. I think it was 90 or something, maybe.
All right. Believe it or not, in 2024 with the Seahawks, when it comes to corner, post, and go, Metcalf had 4 receptions for
That's it.
88 yards.
I wonder why that
Let's see.
production isn't there.
I got double move deep here. I got seam. Let me add those in here for 2024.
Anything
Still
additional?
eight receptions there.
I'm making you be the jester here. Can you go back to 25 and add those other routes in, the seam, the double moves to see, so we can do the apples to apples comparison?
All right. 2025 with the Steelers.
So we had 8 and 24 when you add those additional routes in.
All right, with these same 5 routes checked, we've got DK Metcalf 7 receptions for 201 yards.
Yeah, a little better, but you just want to see more. I think
Right.
there's certainly more to tap into. And I'm sure if you go back to his prime, his best years in 22 and 23 and 2020, those numbers would be elevated. His 2024 production was not immense, 66 catches, under 1,000 yards. I was trying to keep it apples to apples, but obviously there's a lot more to tap into with Metcalf.
Yeah, there's meat on the bone when it comes to pushing the football down the field with Metcalf specifically, definitely beyond the 11 or 12-yard mark.
So that can be our 90 and 30 segment for Metcalf there.
Right.
But to sort of pull back and stay with receivers, Adam Thielen was on ESPN's Unsportsmanlike yesterday, and he was not giving this specifically to Germie Bernard, but sort of talking about how a rookie should approach playing with Rodgers, how Thielen would approach it if he was a rookie with Aaron Rodgers. And he talked about some of the obvious stuff: get in the playbook, sacrifice, don't go out, just study, learn the playbook, learn all the hand signals. If you don't know those things, you're not going to play. But there was one interesting thing that Thielen said too, just sort of giving advice to young guys, which certainly applies to Bernard. He says, quote, just get on the same page. Maybe it's pull him aside. He, referring to Rodgers, loves it. He's not going to go out of his way to pull you aside, but he loves when young guys especially will pull him aside and say, let's get these extra reps in practice. And so if you're Germie Bernard, heed that advice, be in Rodgers' ear, work with him as much as you can, earn that trust, gain that chemistry. It may seem obvious, but I think it's pretty sound advice from a vet, now retired player, in Adam Thielen.
Yeah, the good news is when it comes to Rodgers specifically, although it hasn't happened a lot, he has had good chemistry with a small group of wide receivers early on as rookies. Romeo Dobbs, I think several years ago was one of them, and then Cobb several moons ago as well too. So I look, I think just what we know about the constitution of Germie Bernard at this point. Just listening to his interviews and coaches and teammates talking about him, I think he's going to be a very in tune type player here, and I think he understands. Hopefully, he'll understand what his role is with this team and can hit the ground running right here in training camp. Look, part of getting on the same page is keeping yourself healthy and on the field in these practices. And obviously, Roman Wilson had his issues during his rookie season, which obviously did not involve Aaron Rodgers. And then you fast forward to last year, and Rodgers missing whatever time he missed during the offseason. And I just think, I hope that you will see that indeed happen, at least between Rodgers and Bernard, and kind of each other potentially pulling each other aside and making sure they're on the same page throughout training camp. It's not like we're probably going to see Rodgers play during the preseason at all, if any. So you're going to have to work all this stuff out throughout training camp here, right?
Mhm.
So
Yep.
I think Adam Thielen has said a few times in a few different interviews that it doesn't matter if you're a 10-year vet, if you're not in the right position and Aaron Rodgers can't trust you to run the right route, you're probably not going to be involved in the offense. And Roman Wilson, I think, can definitely speak to that last season. And I think what Mike Williams maybe to some degree a couple of years ago when he was with the Jets and all, probably in the same light there. So it Rodgers has to trust you, and that's going to be a big part of the rookie season for Germie Bernard right out of shoot here during training camp. And hopefully, hopefully once again, because I don't think we're going to see those two get the time during the preseason games there, so it's got to get worked out during training camp.
Right, that's a really good point. You probably won't get those preseason reps just based on Rodgers' age and maybe not playing a lot of these starters in preseason games, obviously, and so it has to come in training camp and you have to work, and that's why you may work on it after practice or early before practice, or I don't know, just some way to find extra time with Rodgers during a special teams period. Hey, can I run some routes? Can you throw to me? Can we talk a little bit? I mean, just whatever you can do to get the extra time with Rodgers will pay dividends down the road, and that'll be Bernard's mission.
Yeah, and look, I people think I'm too low on this, but I think if Germie Bernard can hit 40 receptions for a rookie season, assuming Pittman and Metcalf all stay healthy and kind of Bernard's expected role as the season progresses, I think that'll be a fine rookie season and really something nice to build on going into his second season. Obviously you don't want to see him have Roman Wilson even through two seasons at this point. You expect, you don't spend a second round pick. You don't trade up to get a player like that for him to come out of his rookie season with like 12 receptions or something along those lines there. So, but I do think expecting more, more than 40 receptions is asking a little bit too much. But I do kind of have a target of potentially, I don't know, around 40 receptions for Germie Bernard. And I think that's attainable, assuming he does his part, leading up to the season here.
Yeah. So to go to Bernard, if I told you 30 receptions, how would you feel just on a gut check reaction in terms of how his season might have gone?
Obviously, you have to tell me how many targets are in there and,
Sure.
what the health of, but, assuming everything goes on course with health of the wide receivers, I would be okay. I think if the yards after the catch are there, he's making a few contested catches, and let's say his average yards per reception is maybe in the 12 to 13 range. I think that's achievable there. I don't think it would be the worst thing in the world. I think this team could still win and still be productive on offense if Germie Bernard comes out of his rookie season with just 30 receptions.
Yeah. Okay. Fair enough. So obviously we've talked about Bernard a fair bit, but just wanted to kind of share that. Again, it wasn't direct advice to Bernard. It
No.
was Thielen talking out loud, but I think it's certainly applicable to Bernard and his situation and advice hopefully he hears and advice he hopefully heeds. One other sort of odds and ends thread to pull here. Jon Gruden was on the Not Just Football podcast with Cam Heyward this morning. At least that's when the episode published and aired. I've not really even listened to it yet, but I know Gruden continued to talk up Will Howard and gave an interesting comparison to one Brad Johnson, talking about kind of tough pocket passers. Johnson winning a Super Bowl throughout his career, even though he was not necessarily the catalyst for that. And so that was an interesting comparison from Gruden.
Boy, when you roll back to coming out of the draft, and I mean that really matches what Jon Gruden said about Will Howard coming out of the draft, and he had him on the quarterback, what they call that, Jon Gruden's, was it quarterback class or?
Yeah, quarterback camp, whatever it was called.
Camp series and all like that. For a guy that hasn't played any NFL snaps right now, I mean, he at least Jon Gruden's holding form here.
Yeah, he's been consistent about Will Howard, and I'm sure probably likes Will Howard based on that really good conversation and workout and day they spent together when Howard was coming out of the draft. So if I told you Will Howard became Brad Johnson, would you sign up for that, the good and the bad?
Boy, you're
putting the Super Bowl win aside, just the player career.
Boy, the game has changed so much, right? Since Brad Johnson even played.
Sure. But
I get the short answer. Yeah, I would be fine with that. I mean, Brad Johnson was a starting NFL quarterback for several years in the NFL, and to accomplish that, you have to be you have to be able to win some games and be able to get it done. So, short answer, yeah, I would be fine with that.
Yeah, I think I would be too. I know some people will maybe scoff at that because you want to see Howard reach even greater heights, and hopefully he does. But if that's what he came to be as a solid starter, even if he wasn't the catalyst, then there's a longer discussion about, well, is Howard going to take the franchise anywhere? Or do you need the pieces around him? But for a 6th-round pick to have the longevity of a Brad Johnson who started 125 NFL games, you would take that. But interesting comparison. My comp to Howard coming out was Matt Hasselbeck. I think a little more mobility with Hasselbeck early days than what Brad Johnson had. But I like the comp there from Jon Gruden.
Here's the thing that I'll continue to say about Will Howard at this point, and regardless of where we had him ranked coming out, I think I had him as a 3rd-round guy, mocked him to the Steelers, I think in the 3rd round, and obviously didn't go until the 6th. And you can look at the entire quarterback class, however you want to look at that year. But the fact of the matter is when and if Will Howard ever gets a shot to start and play some snaps in the NFL, whether it be with Pittsburgh or whomever, that window of opportunity is going to be very, very small. So he's going to have to take full advantage of any playing time that he should get, because it's life in the NFL when it comes to quarterback, especially those that aren't first 2 days of the draft. Those guys just historically don't get many opportunities to shine, and they better take advantage of it. Specifically here in Pittsburgh, you got a 3rd-round pick now in Drew Aller, and then obviously everybody be looking forward to potentially what the 2027 quarterback draft class looks like. So we obviously, you would think and hope with Aaron Rodgers back that he's going to play the full season, and you might. We don't even know yet if Will Howard's going to make this roster. I tend to like his chances. I think he should be given every opportunity to win the backup role and compete against Mason Rudolph this summer. We'll see how that goes. But even if he is the number 2 quarterback to start the regular season this year, we might not see him, but about 20 snaps maybe, and even if Aaron Rodgers stays healthy, so we'll still be left to wonder outside of maybe whatever time Will Howard gets during the preseason, what he is as a quarterback. So it just, I think the big point here is, and I'm sure Will Howard probably understands this as well too. If he gets any shot whatsoever to play meaningful football in 2026, he damn sure better take advantage of that and play well, because just a window of opportunity historically when it comes to day 3 quarterbacks isn't great, and teams just generally don't have a lot of patience there.
Sure. Even before then, for the preseason, I expect Howard to dominate the reps in preseason action. As a 2nd-year quarterback, the number 2 quarterback, Drew Aller's going to get some time, but they're going to be a little careful with his reps to not overload him. Howard's going to get the keys, I think, this summer.
All right. I hope so.
By the way, I should mention Caleb Johnson was spotted. I think he posted on Instagram, so he made a spot, him working out with David Montgomery, the successful NFL running back. So a good guy to learn from for Johnson in the offseason.
All right. Looking forward to seeing him this preseason as well.
All right, Dave, let's go to our 90 and 30 pickup where we left off. We'll begin with Mason McCormick, who I thought had a really solid and sort of overlooked season last year. I thought he played really well in his second season in the NFL, and that could continue this time probably at left guard after him and Fautanu appear to be flipping sides, going back to his college home for McCormick and for Fautanu. So your thoughts on Mason McCormick in year 3?
All right, let's start with the durability factor first and foremost with him. He played every offensive snap for the Steelers in 2025, 76 more on special teams during the regular season. Thought he graded out pretty well overall. Just the tape in general, I thought was pleasing with his play. Was still depending on the value that you give it. Charged with allowing 4 sacks in 2025 and 25 total pressures. So definitely needs a little bit of improvement in the pass protection end of things. He also allowed 1 sack and 2 pressures in the playoff game. I think on top of his what I consider to be above the line play in 2025, he was penalized just once during the season last year, and that penalty was for a false start. So was able to hold his water and not cost the team in that area. I think outlook for him moving forward is a good one. It's widely believed that he's going to switch over to the left guard spot, the spot that he predominantly played in college at South Dakota State, and that should be a positive for him, in addition to hopefully still playing alongside Troy Fautanu, who's supposed to, we think, switch over to the left tackle there, on him showing a lot of improvement in his second NFL season. I don't think there's any reason not to think that he can't get even better in 2026, especially you got 2 really what I consider accomplished offensive line coach additions in James Campen and Jari Evans, both whom have played obviously snaps in the NFL on the offensive line. So that should help refine his game. This is going to be a crucial season for Mason McCormick in 2026 because as we've talked about for a little bit or a few times during this offseason here, this is a guy that by this time next year either has a good shot at being signed to a very lucrative contract extension, or we'll still be talking about him potentially maybe ahead of training camp getting underway. Will he get signed there? So how he plays in 2026, if he stays healthy and takes another step forward in his overall play, I fully expect we're going to be having the conversations about a Mason McCormick extension next off season. I think he still has the ability to become an even better run blocker this season if he can accomplish that. In addition to being an even better pass protector. I mean, we could be talking about a guy that is still at kind of the beginning of what could ultimately be, I don't know, 10, 12-year career potentially in Pittsburgh as a starting left guard.
Yeah, I was going to ask you what area of his game would you like to see most improved to sort of take that step and maybe stamp his case for a big money extension next offseason?
I think just more even keel in the pass protection game there. I think run blocking has been adequate enough. I think there is still some area to improve in that. I'd like to see him on the move a little bit more potentially. Something that he did. Some of those kind of skip pulls, if you will, I think at South Dakota State that resulted in some pancakes, if you will, or in some crucial blocks within that. But look, I think he's got the mentality. He obviously has the experience at this point. The fact that he should continue playing alongside Fautanu is a plus there. So. Yeah, I think the expectation should be his best season to date in both as a run blocker and a pass protector.
One thing I want to be looking for from this entire offensive line, but I think the guards primarily and McCormick in particular is sort of unlearning some of the things Pat Meyer had them do in terms of their pass sets, their on-body off body, those more aggressive sets. As I said before, I don't know exactly how Campen's going to teach it, but probably a little bit different. And so you get comfortable. It's your first O-line coach. You taught it, a certain way, and now you have to adjust to a new coach. And I'm sure, obviously, McCormick's had new coaches before. New coach, when he got to the NFL, you adjust. But could there be any initial growing pains as he sort of works some of that old stuff out of his system? I don't know. We'll have to see, but I'll be watching for that early in camp and early in the season.
Look, he a third season now. You can work on being more of a technician now, right?
Well, I think you're always working on being a technician, but yeah, I think to your point, honing your craft and really dialing into the details, what to do. I mean, the offense is new, but you have a level of comfort here. You're working with Fautanu, a guy that and Frazier is going to be on your right side, so your teammates, abundantly well, and so it's also who's going to be a position of leadership. I don't know who's going to assume that mantle with Isaac Seumalo gone. He was sort of that quiet leader, spoke softly but carried a big stick sort of mentality. And so who's going to be that guy? Will it be McCormick? Will it be Fautanu? Will it be Frazier? I'm not sure, but there is sort of that leadership vacuum, I guess you could say. I know that I forget who talked about it. Someone had said that Jari Evans is sort of taking that role as a not too far former player, but a player has to still assume that on the field, hold those guys accountable. What's the old saying? On bad teams, nobody gets held accountable. On good teams, coaches hold players accountable. On great teams, players hold players accountable. And so who's going to be that leader in that offensive line room, a young room overall, with the oldest player on the entire team, I think, is 29 years old.
Driscoll.
And so, yeah, Driscoll. So who's going to take that mantle will be something to watch for, too.
And not that it's a fault of his, but, Frazier's not as vocal. McCormick's, when of the bunch, and that includes, I guess, Fautanu. I mean, really, you're only talking about three guys on that offensive line, because you got a couple of positions on the right side that are obviously up for grabs here. So of the three, of Frazier, McCormick, and Fautanu, which one feels like they might emerge more as maybe kind of the leader of that group?
Yeah, it's really hard to say, and it doesn't always have to be somebody who is vocal or very raw, or animated. Isaac Seumalo certainly was not that guy, but you would, on some baseline level, expect it to be Frazier because he's the center, he's the one making a lot of the line calls. But as long as someone is doing that and taking sort of that leadership role, then I don't really care who it is.
All right. Okay.
All right, let's go to Lake McCree, the undrafted rookie free agent tight end out of USC. That tight end room has gotten pretty crowded since around draft time, and so McCree fighting for a spot.
Yeah, he certainly is. One of the few undrafted free agents that this team signed right out after the draft. Comes out of USC, was obviously just one of just 6 initial players with that annual unrestricted free agent class designation. Was a 5-season college player at USC, played 51 total games, 97 receptions for 1,154 yards and 7 touchdowns. He logged almost 2,000 total offensive snaps in his 5 seasons at USC. Also played an additional 278 on special teams during that span. USC used him a lot as an inline tight end, roughly around, I calculated about 67% of the time during his 5 college seasons. 9 of McCree's 97 college receptions resulted in gains of 25 yards or longer. 29 of those 97 receptions are gains of 15 yards or longer, but college is college. At pro day, measured in okay, 6'4", 1'8", 248 pounds. Moved okay from what I saw overall. I think the big thing with him, even though he was used as an inline tight end at USC, more so than anything else, his blocking to me left a little bit to be desired there. He's definitely going to have to hone in on becoming a better run blocker throughout training camp and the preseason. More than anything, he's going to have to show, I think, that he's got any kind of worthiness when it comes to special teams, which obviously not anything that he's really known of coming out of college, even though he did play a little bit, I think, in that phase of the game there. He's got a lot of you get beyond Darnell Washington and Pat Freiermuth and draft pick Riley Nowakowski. You got Robert. You got Tunyon in that room now, who's a veteran that's got a good chance of making the roster. You also got a few other younger tight ends in Yahin Bell and J.J. Galbraith attempting to win even practice squad spots. I think realistically, if we looking at the tight end depth chart at this point heading into training camp, I think we're looking at McCree competing for a practice squad spot. I think I think a lot would have to happen and him really have a solid preseason, specifically on special teams, for him to make the 53-man roster. I just don't like the chances of that overall. So I think moving forward, assuming he can stay on the 91-man roster throughout the conclusion of the preseason, I think we'll be really evaluating whether or not McCree should be kept on the practice squad.
Yeah, there's talent in this guy. He had some success in college, and he might have been drafted, especially in such a tight end heavy draft, had it not been for the 2 torn ACLs that he had throughout his career. But he's healthy now, and can he show some of those receiving chops? Can he make an impact on some special teams unit? It's kind of like Galbraith last year. Good athlete, can catch the ball. Can he block? Can he kind of maintain when the physicality component of camp and the preseason gets going? I think McCree's probably a little better blocker than Galbraith was last year, and obviously did it at a higher level of competition. So that path had just gotten tighter there with all the additions Pittsburgh has added, be it drafting Nowakowski and then signing Bell and Tunyon especially. So that path is certainly narrowed, but he might make some plays this summer.
All right. I mean, he should get some playing time during the preseason, so that's something to look forward to, because you wouldn't imagine that Freiermuth or Darnell Washington's going to play a lot during the preseason. So we'll certainly have him circled and charted. He could be a guy that ends up around 80 to 100 plays, I think, during the preseason.
Yeah, I mean, there's gonna be so many guys he's competing with, so that may limit things, but obviously you can run 12 personnel and put multiple tight ends on the field, and I'm sure they will. So I don't know what that number exactly will look like, but there'll be probably a healthy amount of reps, because you wouldn't expect a lot for Washington or Freiermuth this summer in preseason.
Right.
All right, we covered DK Metcalf. He was next on the list. We can skip him because we talked about him earlier in the show. So let's move on now to offensive lineman Doug Nestor, who was teammates with Zach Frazier at West Virginia. He's back trying to stick around, Dave.
Yeah, originally entered the NFL in 2024 with the Vikings as an undrafted free agent out of West Virginia, signed to the Steelers practice squad just ahead of the start of the 2024 regular season. And after spending the entire 2024 season on the practice squad, the Steelers re-signed him to a reserve future contract in January of 2025. He was with the Steelers throughout last year's training camp and preseason, logged a lot of snaps, 119 total offensive snaps during last year's preseason tilt. That included him logging time at both guard positions. He also played very limited on special teams last year during the preseason. Did not make the 53-man roster, obviously, last year out of the preseason. He remained unsigned by the NFL until the middle of December, and that's when the Steelers signed him back to their practice squad again. He remained on the practice squad for the remaining few games of last season, and the Steelers immediately signed him to another reserve future contract this past offseason in January. His outlook this summer is really kind of as I wrote in my write-up here, kind of a carbon copy of really a year ago. While he will likely, you would hope that he would, or think that he would stick on the 91-man roster throughout training camp and the preseason. Really an uphill battle when it comes to making a 53-man roster this year. And it goes without saying, because of the depth of this offensive line and the fact that probably at most they're going to keep 9 in total. So ahead of this year's training camp, I think we can probably at a minimum expect to see Nestor once again play both guard spots during the preseason. I think it was not that there's been any hint of this whatsoever. He did get very limited playing time at the center position in college, but he also played both tackle positions during his college career. So at the very least, you've got a guy that from college days at least took snaps, I think, at every position along the offensive line. I guess what I'm getting here is I don't think we're going to see him play any tackle during the preseason this year because I think the arm length, I think he's kind of limited in mobility and athleticism and arm length. I think he's an interior guy overall. Will we see him get any burn whatsoever at center during the preseason? I mean, you obviously got guys like Frazier's going to get some limited work there, you would think. Brock Hoffman, who we've talked about, you would think you're going to see him a little bit at center during the preseason. Who is the Michigan kid, Crippen?
Greg Crippen.
Greg Crippen. Probably going to see him get center work. Will Nestor get any opportunity to maybe show some center work? I think that's probably the most intriguing thing about him. In addition to watching him play both guard spots, you would think during the preseason. I think realistically, he's going to be battling for a spot on the practice squad this summer here, and you got a lot of candidates here for practice squad spots on the offensive line moving forward into the summer.
Yeah, I would expect him to play just both guard spots. I think center's unlikely unless injuries strike. I'm looking back at my camp notes and summer notes. Last year, I had a pretty negative report of Nestor, called it a disappointing summer, gave him a D+. I said, quote, he worked each day and played left and right guard, but there wasn't much more to say beyond that. He has size and in camp showed strength to anchor, but he was too easily pushed around during preseason action and did not play to his size and profile. Picked up a holding call in the opener versus Jacksonville. So he was durable. He was available. There is some versatility. Those are good baseline things, but I want to see probably more play strength from a big guy, Nestor, to stick around longer this year.
Yeah, tough path for him to say the least, but a player that once again should play quite a few snaps during the preseason.
Yeah, and I think guard is probably going to be his home, as we sort of touched on a moment ago. All right, next on the list is running back Lou Nichols, who caught a little bit of buzz in the summer last year. There were a couple of good preseason performances from him, and he stuck around and even got into a couple of NFL games last year, Dave.
Yeah, I think he was elevated for one time for one game last season. He also played in that one game. He was elevated from the practice squad to the tune of 6 special team snaps, and I believe on the kick coverage team with him. Good story overall from last season, even though only one game getting elevated there because he was signed last summer and several days into last year's training camp. Showed enough that he played in all 3 preseason games for the Steelers, registered 87 yards on 11 carries and 5 receptions for another 36 yards. He logged 26 offensive snaps and 22 more on special teams last year during the preseason. He did not obviously make the 53-man roster, but was signed to the practice squad last season, and the team quickly re-signed him to a reserve future contract after the season. With him being a running back, it's obviously going to be an extremely tough path for him this summer, one that's likely to end with him not making the 53-man roster. Going to have to see how that plays out with Heidenreich and obviously Caleb Johnson at the back end of that depth chart. Travis Homer also in the mix there, who they signed as a good special teams player. Assuming that Nichols can stay healthy throughout the summer, we should once again, I think, get to see him play a fair amount of snaps during the preseason on both offense and special teams. And assuming if he can kind of match or better his preseason play from a year ago, I think you have a pretty decent shot of returning to the practice squad to open the 2026 regular season here. But I think it's a good story overall. Look, he's a former 7th round draft pick of the Green Bay Packers back in 2023 out of Central Michigan. Going to definitely have to show his chops on special teams this summer, and I think he's going to be a guy that we'll potentially be talking about as a practice squad player come a couple of months from now.
Yeah, there was something there last year. There was some burst that was explosive. So he had that one really good year in college. I think his next to last year, he led FBS in rushing, and then kind of came crashing back to earth the season after. So he's kind of shown that stuff before. Can he just add more to his arsenal and his traits, more on special teams, maybe some more coverage work? I think he was a lot of return stuff last year. So more you can do, the better, but it's just a tough room with Caleb Johnson, with Heidenreich, with Travis Homer. You got varied skill sets and draft picks and veterans ahead of him, so practice squad probably best for him. And just can he get the carries that he got? Last year you weren't going to give a ton to Warren and Gainwell. I don't think he even played a ton in the preseason last year. Obviously, had a rookie in Caleb Johnson last year, but this year just feels like it's a little more crowded, and it just might be tougher for Nichols to get some of those opportunities. But there's some talent there. He flashed it, and if it's still there this year, then they'll probably find a place for him.
Hey, for a guy to arrive to the team via after training camp open and get himself on the practice squad and even get elevated for one game, that's an accomplishment in and of itself. But
Sure.
That was last year, and you got a new coaching staff, and you got to do it all over again. So I think once again, realistically, we might be looking at Lou Nichols as a practice squad player.
He wasn't the one signed after they waived or released Cordell Patterson, or was it? I'm looking last year. July 29th, they signed. They made a bunch of moves last year, but I would say that was the Cordell Patterson replacement. He was released on the same day that Nichols was signed, so there's a full circle moment of sorts. I guess it's really not full circle, but just a little footnote there. All right, next on the list is a rookie draft pick, 5th rounder, Riley Nowakowski, Dave.
Yeah, let's see. You would think because of, not necessarily. 5th-round draft picks aren't guaranteed to make the roster, but you got to like his chances based on position that he plays and what he can potentially add to this team. Let's see. He played in 55 games. You're talking about a guy here that started off at Wisconsin and was an outside linebacker before making a move a couple of years into his college career to fullback / I guess tight end. His final college season obviously included him playing at Indiana, where he won a national championship. Let's see, what did he register during his college career? 50 receptions for 518 yards and 3 touchdowns. 43 of those receptions for 361 yards and 2 touchdowns came during his final 2 college seasons. The first of 2 obviously being at Wisconsin there, so he's played for some big time programs in college there. The big question, he was the East-West Shrine Bowl participant, or he was invited to that. He did not play because of Indiana's long college playoff run, so he had to decline that and bow out of that, which is understandable. The Steelers list him as a fullback since he was drafted, but I think it's been obvious through the word that's come out throughout the offseason program that he's just as involved with the tight ends as well. Over the course of the last 2 seasons in college, he lined up in the backfield just 35 times, where he was technically listed as a backfield player. During that same span, he lined up as an inline tight end on 986 offensive plays. Should be a good special teams player. We should expect probably him to get some work in training camp in the preseason as a true fullback. I'm guessing we'll see him at some wing kind of H-back and inline tight end work more predominantly, I guess, during the training camp and preseason here. He is a guy that you can split out wide on occasion as well too. Definitely going to have to make his mark on special teams, which I don't think that's going to be an issue for him overall. I think, assuming that he does make the 53-man roster this year, which right now I have him penciled in as doing so. As far as his playing time goes, I think it could very closely resemble what we saw Connor Heyward play in 2025. Heyward played just 90 offensive snaps during the regular season and 290 more on special teams. That kind of feels like a gap in snaps that Riley Nowakowski can fill in as a rookie here moving forward. I think it's going to be something to watch as an inline tight end when it comes to his run blocking. I imagine we're going to see some split zone stuff with him coming across formations, but even when it comes to maybe being utilized in the passing game, assuming he does make the 53-man roster, feels like it's going to be hard for him to get, say, more than around 10 targets this coming season, and especially if Pat Freiermuth and Darnell Washington both remain healthy and get the usage out of him, out of those two that you would expect there. But we're going to see a ton of him, I think, during the preseason if he's healthy. A lot on offense, a lot on special teams. A guy that seems to have the right demeanor. Obviously played defense during his college career to start with, so should be some physicality that we should look for there. So, when you look at this tight end class, and we knew that this team was likely to probably address the tight end position, I think you could have done a lot worse for getting Riley Nowakowski in the 5th round.
Yeah, well said, well covered by you, Dave. It's funny because I always thought with Arthur Smith, they were going to bring in a fullback, and they never really did. Connor Heyward was used there a little bit, but there really was no main acquisition with the intent of a fullback, and McCarthy has done that out of the gate, and he's talked about that quite a bit, sort of his West Coast roots and the one-back offense and the two-back offense, and that's kind of the way he builds out his personnel from there. And I think Pittsburgh really was intent on trying to find a fullback. I can never prove it. I don't have clear evidence, but I'm pretty sure the team was intent on drafting Michigan fullback Max Bredesen until the Vikings took him. They traded back, picked up a pick, and they took Nowakowski, which tells me they really wanted a fullback for this offense. And Nowakowski certainly fits that bill. It might be even a better fit than Bredesen because Nowakowski's got more to offer as a receiver and in the passing game. And so I really want to see the split between inline tight end work and fullback work. I know that I think it was Ramon Chinyoung Jr., the running backs coach, talked about that Nowakowski was splitting time between both rooms, and frankly in the tight end room more than he was in the running back room, which I thought was interesting there, which could bode well. So the question really will be, can they have Nowakowski function as the number 3 tight end and the fullback, or will they keep a separate number 3 tight end like a Robert Tonyan or somebody else? That's one piece of roster construction we'll be discussing and debating, and I'm sure we'll get comments about throughout this process until August 30th cut down. But interesting pick. Should be a quality special teamer, has the mentality, linebacker background that you mentioned. Obviously, the offensive production will be pretty faint, but I think it's a good fit for the Mike McCarthy offense.
I do as well.
I think I asked you this way back when, but I'll ask it again just to see if your thoughts have changed, and I frankly forget what you said before. Connor Heyward, his rookie year, he caught 12 passes for 151 yards and 1 touchdown. Will Riley Nowakowski have more or less than 12 passes his rookie season?
Yeah, that feels kind of rich, specifically when you look at the offensive personnel, skill players in this offense. I think if he can, I think 5 or 6 feels more realistic as far as receptions for him, to be honest with you.
Going to assume you're going to take the under on the 151 on yards then.
Yeah.
And the touchdown.
He can get it. I mean, yeah, I think that's a coin flip.
All right, I'll take over on receptions. I'll take under on the 151 yards. I think he'll catch more than 12 this year, and I'll say he'll catch 1 touchdown. All right, that's Riley Nowakowski. Next on the list, we'll go through the final 3 here. We'll go with defensive lineman Asezi Otomewa, and he's known for Tony Romo having no idea how to pronounce his name at any point during a broadcast last year. I remember him always stumbling over that. But the Big O, as they call him, sort of came on stronger at the end of the season, made the roster out of camp, which was good for him. Was initially, I believe, inactive. Logan Lee getting the hat. That changed after the bye, and Otomewa played some rotational snaps the rest of the way. Yeah,
former 5th round draft pick of the Vikings. Let's see. They signed him to the Steelers signed him to a 1-year contract for the minimum March 2025. He ended up making the 53-man roster as a backup on the defensive line. He was inactive early in the 2025 regular season, but he ultimately played in 12 games, regular season games, in addition to the playoff game against the Texans. He registered 9 total tackles, 1 tackle for loss, 1 sack across 173 total defensive snaps played. He also logged 24 more snaps on special teams during the regular season. He registered 2 tackles in the playoff game, only played 20 or more defensive snaps in a regular season game 4 times last season as well too. Believe it or not, for his NFL career to date, he has only registered 18 total tackles, 2 tackles for loss, 1.5 sacks, 3 quarterback hits, and 1 fumble recovery in 21 regular season games that he's played in. He's also logged just 352 total regular season snaps for his NFL career to date. The Steelers re-signed him to a 1-year, $1.75 million contract this past March. That deal included a signing bonus of $187,500. On the surface, and when I was writing this up, I was thinking, you know what? It feels like up until this point, he's kind of been a guy that's been felt like he's at least probably more inside the bubble than right outside of it. Probably more specifically, a lot of people probably have him right on the bubble entering training camp this year. In short, he's not guaranteed a roster spot, I don't think, at this point. I mean, I think you're dealing with a kind of a fringe backup player in Otomewo. The Steelers at the very least seem destined to keep at least 6 defensive linemen this year, possibly as many as 8. It's one of those big questions that we have as far as roster construction go. Realistically, the number could wind up being 7. And if you take into account that it feels like the top 5 spots are already spoken for in Cam Heyward, Keanu Benton, Derek Harmon, Y.A. Black, and Sebastian Joseph Day, you start taking your shoes off and counting the toes up to do the math there. That's not many potential spots open on this 53-man roster. You got guys like, obviously, Logan Lee going to be in the mix. You got Gabriel Rubio. You got Kevin Jabity Jr. And Anthony Goodlow, right?
Goodlow, Dean Lowry.
Dean Lowry. You got a lot of guys in the mix here. So don't run out and buy an Otomewo jersey this summer for sure. I think he's really going to have to earn this spot here during the preseason and training camp. And if he's not on the 53-man roster to start the regular season, I won't be shocked. And I think there might be some conversation to be had later in the summer, depending on how things play out with the depth on this defensive line and the health of the defensive line. Might we potentially be talking about Otomewo starting the regular season on the practice squad?
Yeah, he could. There's something to like there with this guy. He caught my attention last year. He's a good athlete, a decent pass rusher. He was playing in some of those. This came with late in games, or when they had some injuries. But those amoeba fronts or one defensive lineman fronts, like their 1-5-5 look on 3rd and longs, he would play in a couple of those snaps in those situations. He's got great effort. Remember the Browns game? He's chasing the football hard. He certainly has some of the traits you look for in a defensive lineman, but he's undersized. He's not a great run stuffer. He's not the 310-pounder, the 35-inch arms, the typical profile that Pittsburgh drafts and usually collects, and so that might be hurting him. But he does stick out because we talk about, they got the run stuffers on the D-line, guys who can play the run really well. I mean, Heyward's well-rounded, but Heyward, Harmon, Black, Joseph Day, we talked about where the pass rushers, what's the second wave pass rush on that D-line coming from? You have Benton, you have Heyward, obviously. Harmon, I want to see a step. Black's not going to be a pass rusher. Joseph Day's not going to be a pass rusher. Lee, not really going to be that guy. Lowry, not going to be that guy. Rubio, not going to be that guy. Can Otomewo kind of stick out by offering something as a pass rusher? Could he play on special teams? Could he run down kicks? I think he could, just given the new kickoff rules and his athletic profile. So it'll be that line between his run defense, his size not being ideal, but there being something there as an athlete. So that sort of puts him on that bubble you talk about. Past that first 5 that you mentioned who are locks, and I agree, who has the next best chance of making the roster of, say, that 6th spot?
Yeah, and I think you hit on a good point there with his pass rush abilities being more of his calling card more than anything, and that might be the thing that helps him out the most. Would you? I'll answer your question with a question. Do you consider him inside the bubble right now, on the bubble, or outside the bubble ahead of training camp starting?
Let me look at my deconstructing the roster. I figured exactly what odds I gave him and where I what category or bucket I put him in. So just give me 1 second. I'll pull up the article and give you the answer that I had probably about a month ago. He was probably just outside the bubble or right on it. Let me look here if I can find it. Oh, why can't I find it on here? Give me a second. I'll have to figure out where I have him at. I thought it was in my final results, but apparently I did not put the whole list of names on there. I had him at a 45% chance in the squarely on the bubble category. So I think I had Rubio a little bit ahead at 49%.
Wow.
Otomewa at 45%. I forget. I mean, I had Lee and Lowry. I know those guys were lower. Job D was lower. So that keeps, in theory, if this maths and it's correct, and if they keep 7, then Otomewa would get the spot. If Rubio gets hurt, then Otomewa gets the spot. So does that sound about right? It sounds like you would put him about 50-50.
Yeah, I would view him more on the bubble than I would probably inside the bubble. But obviously, roster construction and how many kept would play into that. So, I mean, 50% chance seems fair with him, 45 to 50.
Would you give Rubio a better chance the way that I am, slightly, albeit?
I just wrote him up. I'm writing him up today, and man, if he can stay healthy and show anything as a run defender, look, you said it, and we said it based on his tape. There's a lot to be excited about when it comes to Rubio, when it comes to a run defender, his ability to space eat, and but when it comes to pass rushers, just really nothing there, and the question is going to become, who. I think you hit on it. Who are your other pass rushers as far as depth? Someone that you could throw out there in a sub package type situation with either one or two defensive linemen on the field, where it's a down and distance situation requires getting after the passer, and I think that's where Otomewo might have the edge there. Rubio, obviously, with the injury concerns and being more of a run defender than anything else, and it's gonna be a tough road for him.
So who would you put as that 6th guy if you had to put a number 6 right now? Would it be Rubio? Would it be Otomewo?
It would probably be Otomewo right now, based on the pass rush ability and the ability to function more in sub package situation.
Yeah, I hear that. It's just it depends what they're looking for. Depends what they need. Because there are different types of guys. Rubio and Otomewo, rookie versus a more veteran, a run stuffer versus a more athletic pass rusher, sub package kind of a guy, and Otomewo. So interesting battle. I think that D-line battle across the board will be really competitive, really fun, and should bring out the best in the entire group.
Right.
All right, next on the list is wide receiver A.T. Perry. And fun trivia question. He was the first player signed after Mike McCarthy was hired. Now, that may have already been planned by the team. I don't know if that was a Mike McCarthy directive, but just a fun little trivia question. And, Perry had success as a rookie with the Saints back in 2023, but he's yet to play in a game since. And I'm stealing all the stuff that you wrote about. So go ahead and talk about A.T. Perry, Dave.
Yeah, signed to a reserve future contract back in January, as you mentioned. That came on the heels of him spending the entire 2025 season on the Denver Broncos practice squad. He was originally, as you noted, signed by the Saints in the 6th round of the 2023 NFL draft out of Wake Forest. He had 171 receptions there, 2,600 yards, 28 touchdowns overall as a rookie with the Saints. He had a little cup of coffee with the Saints as a rookie. 12 receptions, 246 yards, and 4 touchdowns on 18 total targets there. So some good production on 18 total targets. I mean, 12 receptions, 246 yards, and 4 touchdowns in total. He did play in 10 games during the 2023 regular season and logged 343 total offensive snaps. He did not, however, play any on special teams as a rookie. That might seem like a throwaway kind of stat there, but I think that's kind of significant there. During the 2024 season, the Saints listed Perry as an inactive player for their first 4 games. They ultimately waived him, and the Broncos then signed him to their practice squad. And then once again, after he stayed on the Denver practice squad for the remainder of the 2024 season, the Broncos signed him to a reserve future contract in 2025. And then I guess the rest is history. history from here on out. I think the big note with him is he does possess some NFL game experience up until this point. He still has a very, very tough road ahead of him when it comes to 53-man roster opportunities this summer here. The Steelers obviously drafted Germie Bernard, Caden Weegan, both of whom seem locked to make the roster this year. Throughout his college career, Perry did not play much on special teams. He's going to have to change that narrative and show that he can function in some phase of that game throughout this summer if he wants any chance at making a 53-man roster per se as like a fifth or sixth wide receiver. I think realistically, we're talking about Perry auditioning for a practice squad spot with the Steelers this summer, or maybe potentially a depth 53-man roster spot with another team, or a practice squad opportunity with another team. It's just going to be a very, very tough road for him. And the fact that he doesn't really stick out on special teams as a college or pro player to date is certainly a narrative he's going to have to change really, really quick over the summer here.
Yeah, that's the big red flag with him. It looks like 13 career special team snaps in the preseason he's logged. Most of those, 12 of those coming his rookie year. And so when you don't have that value, you're a back end of the roster guy. He's got to find a way to create that elsewhere. There's some talent. He was a popular draftnik favorite coming out of Wake Forest. He's got size. He's got athleticism. He's over 6'2". He ran sub 4.5. You know, there's some receiving talent there, but when you're entering camp as a number 7, number 8 type of receiver, you can't make it just on your receiving chops alone. And so can he find other ways to create value for himself will be key. Now, could he get on the practice squad because of that offensive value? If he makes some plays and injuries happen and he gets a call up, then that may be a more viable path. But that'll be the challenge. And we've seen a lot of talented receivers just not make it because, I mean, who was it last year? Wasn't there somebody in camp last year? Rock Taylor. Remember Rock Taylor? Mm-hmm. We had a little bit of buzz out of him. I forget what his special teams resume was. I don't think it was a ton. And those guys just sometimes get cut pretty early.
Yeah, you look, if you're going to be a back of the end wide receiver player in the NFL, and you got to be able to play on special teams. And once again, that's going to be a huge negative narrative for him to overcome.
I did call him a super sleeper in a recent post. I think he could make some plays this summer that's going to create some buzz from the media standpoint. Look at A.T. Perry. He's got a couple years under his belt, might be facing a rookie, wide-eyed guy, and have the advantage there and the athletic profile. So I think he'll make some plays, maybe make some noise, but to really, truly stick and have real value to the coaching staff, can he do more than just catch passes?
Right.
Would be the mission, but I think we beat that horse pretty good. So next on the list is Michael Pittman Jr., traded for really Pittsburgh's first offseason move in terms of player acquisition, if memory serves. That happened very early when free agency opened up this year, and now he's looking to make an impact in Pittsburgh, dude.
All right, yeah, absolutely. You go out and trade for a guy like that. You turn around and give him a 2-year, $35 million contract extension on top of it. He's earning well over $20 million in cash this year. A guy that's expected, as we talked about, to come in and complement a guy like DK Metcalf and take his and get his fair share of targets and receptions. Recorded 80 receptions for 784 yards and 7 touchdowns with the Colts last season, despite having 3 different starting quarterbacks for that team. One of which obviously was Phillip Rivers, and one of them was Daniel Jones, and who was the one sandwiched in between there? Was it Riley Leonard, I think?
Leonard got a look.
So look, the fact that this guy had to play on a team that had to cycle through the quarterbacks that they had to go through, I think that speaks of who he is. He'll only be 28 years old at the start of the regular season and turn 29 in October. He has registered 485 total receptions for over 5,000 yards and 25 touchdowns in 95 regular season games. Solid player since entering the NFL. While he has averaged 97 or 87 receptions for around 940 yards per season for his NFL career, it feels like him attaining a similar stat line with the Steelers in 2026 might be a tough ask overall. I think realistically, when you look at DK Metcalf, you look at Germie Bernard, you look at the tight ends, you look at Aaron Rodgers, I think realistically we're looking somewhere between 60 to 65 receptions for Pittman in 2026 for around 700 to 750 yards. That feels a lot more plausible, especially while competing with Metcalf for weekly target share. He isn't likely to produce a lot of explosive plays at 20 yards or longer in Pittsburgh. He still can produce a few of them, however. And with a lot of high volume gains of 12 yards or longer, that's sort of been his sweet spot. It feels like a very smart player, and could potentially have 6 or 7 receiving touchdowns in Pittsburgh, and that's extremely exciting when it comes to 2026. Seems to have at least one drop for every touchdown pass reception he has in the NFL. So I would expect that potentially to remain the same, which obviously isn't awful when it comes to that. While not being known as a huge contested pass catcher throughout his NFL career, he can still make a grab or two in traffic throughout a season. His presence in Pittsburgh as a run blocker should be more than enough to work with based on his tape so far. The same with the ability to get necessary yardage on third downs whenever he's targeted. He also has a history of being a great teammate, great attitude. That's another refreshing aspect of him being a member of the Steelers moving forward. So overall, here's what I wrote. Pittman should be expected to be an incredibly good complement to Metcalf in Pittsburgh. While he isn't likely to put up gaudy 2026 stats, there's no reason to think that he won't have a few 100 receiving games in 2026 and essentially be the kind of complement or number 2 wide receiver that the Steelers have been lacking the last several seasons.
Yeah, it's certainly an upgrade over what Pittsburgh had. That was a low bar to clear, and Pittman certainly does clear it. I guess the question is just, can he really provide what Pittsburgh is looking for? We talked so much about the explosive pass plays. So do you think Pittman can? Obviously, he won't be the main focal point of explosive pass plays, but how much do you think he can help in that area, Dave?
Yeah, that goes back into the conversation of Rodgers being able to push the football down the field. I kind of view him as a 3 or 4 explosive play contributor this season, with probably half of those coming after the catch, if you will. So I don't think you're going to see a huge explosive play guy. A lot of catches down the field of more than 16 yards in the air.
He had 5 receptions at 20-plus yards last year, over under 5 this year in Pittsburgh.
I'll take the under just to be the pessimist here. I'll let you be the optimist here.
I've not been the most optimistic person about Michael Pittman. A good player. It's just, is he fitting what Pittsburgh's offense needs, which is guys who can beat man coverage and create big plays. Pittsburgh had only 41 completions at 20-plus yards last year. That was a pretty low number and a big drop from even 2024. And so I just, I know that the counterpoint to that would be, well, Pittman's role last year was the, move the chains guy over the middle, the dirty work that had Alec Pierce to do some of that vertical stuff, and Tyler Warren too. And I know McCarthy has talked about wanting to change his route tree and diversify his skill set. And so that'll be the real thing I'll be watching for, is will Pittsburgh walk that walk? And if so, can Pittman kind of turn back the clock? He is getting a little bit older, getting close to 30. And can he have that juice to make those plays? He's a big body. And so you have Metcalf and Pittman, and Pittsburgh has a very tall and large couple of receivers in terms of the tight ends in Washington and Frymouth. And then, of course, the receivers in Pittman and Metcalf. But that's the thing I'll be watching for most of all. I'm very confident Pittman can make the dirty work play over the middle, move the chains. He can block. He's going to be a selfless guy, a really good teammate, really good presence. I get all of that, no questions about that. But can he do something this offense has been lacking, which is create those big plays, or can somebody else provide that? I'm a little skeptical of that. So even though it was, they gave up nothing in the trade, gave him a big contract, and all I care about is, can Pittsburgh create big plays? I don't know for sure Pittman can do that, but I'll be watching for it.
All right. If you go look at his NFL career, and if you were to exclude his 2020 rookie season, his fewest receptions during one regular season was 69. Nice. I think he's going to struggle to hit that 69 number. Would you agree? Is his sweet spot somewhere between maybe 60 and 65 catches for him, especially when we're almost to reverse engineering season of Aaron Rodgers and his passing stats when you start taking into account Metcalf, Pittman, Freiermuth, Washington, Bernard, the running backs. You start whittling that down, especially even if you were to go to high side of whatever you think Aaron Rodgers is going to complete. In other words, there's not enough footballs probably to go around. That's why I kind of view him as a sweet spot between 60 and 65 receptions.
Yeah, I think that sounds right. To answer your question, I think he's more likely to be under that 69 number than above it. If you assume Metcalf's going to lead the team in receptions and he's going to catch 75 passes, you would think and hope and expect, then Pittman's going to be below that. I think 60, 65 makes sense. Now, in fairness, Rodgers completed 500 passes last year. A bunch of those went to Kenneth Gainwell. You would expect the running backs to catch fewer passes this year, so the ball's going to be, I think, distributed elsewhere. So could Pittman still hit 70 and do some of that dirty work stuff? He could, but I think 60, 65 sounds about right for a Pittman projection.
And I think, too, if let's say he ends up in that 60 to 65 reception range, if he can equal his career average of yards per reception at 10.8, I think that would be a positive, definitely a positive, obviously, when it comes to him. Now, if we're talking about, somewhere, I think his worst season with the Colts, yards per reception was 9.3, and he had 9.8 average yards per reception last season. Realistically, is that what we're looking at? Are we looking at a guy that might just come in just under 10 yards per reception, or can he come closer to 11? It doesn't seem like there's that much of a difference, but when you're talking about a guy that we're projected at only 60, 65 receptions, I mean, that could be potentially another 100 yards right there in receiving for this team. So I do think he's going to be a guy that can move the chains for you on third down. I think he obviously could be a red zone option for Aaron Rodgers. I would expect him to be able to get on the train really, really quick with Aaron Rodgers and knowing where he's supposed to be. But once again, it just feels like the ceiling for him, even if he were to hit it in 2026 with the Steelers, might produce his fewest receptions outside of his rookie season and his fewest yards, receiving yards since coming into the league in 2020.
Hard to get super hyped about that framing. If he catches 63 passes for that 10.8 yard career average, you mentioned that 680 yards, let's just say 5 or so touchdowns, plus or minus. Does that feel like it was worth the investment?
Well, it goes back into how much you're paying this guy in cash for this season. Obviously, his cash total gets lower as the two additional seasons there. But I mean, you got to think about what he's being asked to be. I think him hitting those numbers is what the Steelers need for this offense to have the level of success that I think a lot of people are hoping for him to have. For this offense to have.
But don't they need big plays? It's not like the big thing they were missing last year. They did the short yardage stuff, and Pat Freiermuth can catch the move the chain stuff. Don't they need the explosive playmaker?
What they need is a average net yards per pass attempt of close to 7. That's what they need. Whatever that looks
explosive
like.
Play. You get that through explosive plays, not through 5 yards in a cloud of dust.
Look, if he gets 6 explosive plays or more, Pittman alone, you're probably getting them somewhere else in the offense as well too. So it probably has been a good season. I have my doubts that will happen. But a lot of this is going to depend on Aaron Rodgers in the quarterbacking.
Sure.
Period.
Sure. And Pittman, I'm sounding pretty pessimistic. I've had that tone probably since Pittman's acquisition. He's a good player. He is better than what Pittsburgh had last year. There is no question about that. He is a more complimentary number 2. You like the size they're building at receiver. That's going to be unique and challenge defenses with Metcalf and Pittman. I guess they're calling themselves on Instagram the Twin Towers, which I'm not sure if that's a nickname you want to go for. I'm not sure that evokes a good memory, but whatever. You have Freiermuth, you have Washington. Like, Pittman's going to make some plays this year. He's going to make some tough catches. He's going to be a selfless dude. He's not going to worry about the diva stuff that Pittsburgh's had in the past. But when the team went into the offseason, my vision and my hope was for somebody a little more explosive than what Michael Pittman Jr. I think offers.
Yeah, but what good does it have you if you're going to have a quarter? You can't have your cake and eat it too. So I guess you, especially when you're dealing with a quarterback in Aaron Rodgers that has had problems pushing football down the field. So I think you got to play to what kind of what you expect the strengths to be overall. I mean, yes, absolutely, this team has to find a way to register more explosive plays. But the fact that they wanted to look, we both weren't totally on board with Aaron Rodgers coming back this season for basically what we saw the last two seasons with him there. But you can't want this team to go out and get finally make a splash at the second wide receiver mark and then be critical because of the quarterback being the quarterback, I guess is what I'm trying to say.
I mean, I don't think you have to lean into it and say, well, Rodgers is just going to throw shorter lots. Let's get him to more short yardage targets, because that's not going to get you to where you need to go as an offense to a year adjusted net yards per passing attempt number that you talk about so much. And so I think it's both and. You want an explosive receiver, and you want to tell Rodgers that the offense can't function the exact way that it functioned last year for them to have success. I don't think it's a fatalist of, well, we're just going to have to be a 3-yard air yard offense.
Well, it definitely needs to be more than that. I think we can agree on that. And, how much will this team rely on yards after the catch once again? And can they be as good, if not better, in that area while getting a few? I mean, all this boils back down to my biggest concerns about this offense. And that's the fact that, you wonder, where they're going to be as far as creating explosive plays and being able to push the football down the field.
Right. And then my point is the Pittman addition helping solve that problem?
I mean, as far as expectations go with me and him individually, no.
Right. So that's where I come in a little critical of it. But I think Pittsburgh's case will be we're going to use him differently. We're going to use him, in fairness, 2 years ago, he averaged almost 12 yards a catch. If he can do that, in Pittsburgh this year, then it's probably you're feeling good about what he's offering this offense.
It's going to be extremely hard for Michael Pittman to adjust the $20-something million that he's earning this year, correct?
That's sort of my sense. I mean, his longest reception, even the past 2 years, is 33 yards. He had 5 receptions of 20-plus yards. Some of that may be just how the offense decided to deploy him, but those numbers have to change.
All right.
So
we'll definitely see. That's the thoughts on the offense for sure.
All right, that's going to wrap up this 90-3. We're going to get some probably not hate mail, but we'll get some criticism. I think some pushback on the Pittman stuff there, but that's fine.
Look, we're probably going to get credit. And I think we have to some degree gotten pushback on kind of expectations on some of these numbers. And look, I got a lot of it last year when I talked about Metcalf. Now, look, did I know Metcalf was going to miss 2 games due to a suspension? No. Once again, it could Metcalf have easily shattered 900 or 1,000 yards last year had he played 2 more games? It's possible there. But I just think in totality, and I understand, Mike McCarthy coming in, the excitement of that, and Aaron Rodgers' second season, going out and getting a guy like Pittman and doing what they, the expectations of the running game and offensive line. But I feel push comes to shove when we get into the final, talking about the final conversations ahead of the season there. People are going to think that I'm definitely not bullish enough when it comes to some of these individual statistics, and until proven otherwise when it comes to this offense, I think we're going to be talking a lot about where is this adjusted net yards per passing attempt number at for Aaron Rodgers as the season progresses around the midway point, and where are they on passing explosive plays? I think we've been fair and objective when it comes to all these offensive skill positions, specifically when we talk about expectations as far as receptions and receiving yards and explosive plays.
Just to have it on record, would you have rather this team sign Romeo Doubs in for agency or make the trade for Pittman as they did?
You know how I feel about Romeo. I've loved up Romeo. I think he gives you the ability to both be that possession receiver underneath and the ability to go deep. So, I would have much rather them gone down the Romeo Doubs avenue.
Same. So we'll see what happens this year. But Pittman, again, will make some plays. He will be an asset. He will be an upgrade. There's no debate over last year where they really didn't even have a number 2. I mean, it's Calvin Austin, and then it just got really messy late in the year with Scantling and Thielen. Pittman certainly can offer more, but will Pittsburgh's central offensive problem be solved is all I'm trying to say.
All right. Will this receiving core, at least on paper, ahead of the camp, is it better than what they had a year ago? And I think the short answer is yes, right?
Sure.
Yes. It's what they do with it and what kind of limitations their quarterback gives them moving forward with a better wide receiver unit.
Yeah, it's that. It wasn't hard to make it better because it was pretty darn bad last year. So my litmus test is not necessarily is it better, which it is. It's how much better could it have been even better? In a world of hypotheticals that don't mean much, I know, where you have DK Metcalf, Romeo Dobbs, and Mekhi Lemon. I think that's certainly a sizable jump over what Pittsburgh's current group looks like.
All right, we'll try to get to possibly 9 more of these on Friday, and we're going to have Joe Clark with us on, not Monday, on Friday.
Yeah, we'll have Joe Clark on Friday. I want to get his pre-training camp thoughts and maybe even talk a little bit about Michael Pittman or the receiving room or his kind of thoughts and positives and negatives about this team and the direction of the Mike McCarthy era. So any reader emails to close out today's show, Dave?
Yeah, we have a few of them in here. We will start with Arthur Elliott here. This one's titled Broderick Jones. He says, Dave and Alex, can a player block a restructure of their contract that simply just turns their expected salary into a signing bonus and lowers their base salary to a minimum? He says, I was thinking back to when Ryan Shazier had his 5th year option handled in the same way so that when his contract eventually told the next year, the Steelers could carry him again, but at the minimum. Could we see something similar with Broderick Jones? It would make sense if they don't believe he'll come off PUP to have him at the minimum next year as your swing tackle and also give you insurance if another player takes a step back. Okay, Arthur, here's the difference here when it comes to Broderick Jones' situation and the Ryan Shazier situation. Shazier had his 5th year option exercised. Broderick Jones did not. So when they went and that's a huge difference there for the sheer fact too, because with if Broderick Jones stays on PUP all season, his salary from this year will toll over and carry over to 2027. Now, obviously, he has to stay on PUP for the entire season for his final contract year to toll. The situation with Ryan Shazier was correct me if I'm wrong, it tolled under the 5th year option amount.
I'd have to think about that. That sounds right. Everything that happened after that football-wise just felt, formality, procedure, and I didn't really pay much attention to it. I can look it up, though.
Let's see. I'm trying to remember how that went with him. I've got, let's see. Ryan Shazier's contract will be tolled into the 2019 NFL season. I guess the question was that the year?
But then they redid that they took his money down, didn't they? Took a big pay cut. He didn't play on the 5th year option that year, or did he? His 5th year option was exercised in April of 2017. That was, months before he got hurt. So,
and that would have been for the 2019 season, right?
2019 season?
Yeah, if it tolls and if they pick up the option in 2017, it's not for the season immediately after. It's for the fifth year.
Okay, gotcha.
All right, so that's where the difference here is, and it's a huge difference in the fact that Broderick Jones did not have his 5th year option exercised. So on paper right now, if Broderick Jones does not go the whole year on PUP, then he will effectively become an unrestricted free agent after this season.
You said for 2019. Now the 5th year option for Shazier would have been for 2018. That's what I'm reading here. They picked it up in April. It wouldn't have been for the 2017 season. It would have been for the year after. If Broderick Jones got his 5th year option picked up this year, would have been for next year. Am I wrong on that?
I'm trying to remember here.
Like, if Broderick Jones had his fifth-year option exercised in May, that would have been for 2027, correct?
Yeah.
Okay, so Shazier would have been for 2018. So
Wait,
his fifth-year option,
what year was Broderick Jones drafted?
23.
Okay, 23, 24, 25, and I'm losing track because I'm trying to research Ryan Shazier at the same time here.
Yeah, it's his fourth year. Like 23 is 24, 25, 26. That's 4 years. That's his, and then his fifth year option would have been for 2027. So Shazier was picked up in April of 2017. That would have been for the 2018 year.
Okay.
Now I forget what happened from there. Did they do something with that fifth year option after he got hurt? I'd have to research that a little bit more.
I know we've got it on the site somewhere, and I'm losing track of the years here all of a sudden. Let me see if I can find it real quick. What they did with the restructure there and how that impacted with Ryan Shazier.
To sort of answer a core element of the question, I mean, in terms of like the restructures that get done, usually that's written in the contract. The teams can restructure that contract as they see fit.
Yeah. Generally, when it comes to the Steelers, look, normally, do you need the player's permission? Yes, to do that. I don't know why a player would ever want to block it, but the Steelers generally with these larger contracts that they do all have the language in there that they can restructure at will.
Yeah. On Shazier, and I'm just reading headlines here. What Pittsburgh appeared to do in May of 2018, they converted a portion of that Shazier 2018 salary into a signing bonus, which then took his salary down to the minimum, and then that told into 2019, which they ended up paying a portion of. So they restructured the fifth year option basically to bring this base salary down, and then that base salary told for 2019.
Okay. All right. But I mean, and the difference here obviously is they exercised his fifth year option and he didn't exercise the Broderick Jones. So
right. Now if Jones' contract tolls, he'll make the same amount of money he's scheduled to make this year, correct?
Right. There'll be and obviously there'll be no reason to restructure it because it'll be such a low amount.
Right. So I think there was a reference to him playing on the minimum, which I mean, he play on his, whatever this year's base salary, which is I think a couple $1 million. So he won't be playing for peanuts, but that'll be how that works.
Right. All right. We got ourselves in the weeds there just from the lack of memory. Let's see here. Neil writes in, are there any players on this team that scare you? Someone opposing teams would have to game plan around. He says, Rodgers is really smart, still has the arm, but can't move very well anymore. Two good running backs, but I don't think they can take over a game. He says, DK is huge, but he doesn't feel like a true number one to me. He says, Washington has potential. He says, TJ is still really good, but seemed to have lost a step and always hurt by the end of the year. He says, the inside linebackers are average at best. He says the D-line gets run over too much. He says, I see a lot of good, but no great players. That probably means yet another wild card blowout. He says, I'm more excited about seeing the young quarterbacks in the preseason than anything else. If they hit on one of them and the O-line works out, we might not be that far away from a playoff win. He says he loves to show hope all as well. So who on this team scares you if as an opponent going into when looking at the current roster construction?
I understand the point in Pittsburgh maybe lacking in some of those, high-end elite guys. I mean, I think Watt is still going to be a force and a guy that you have to start your game plan around. I think teams that don't still pay a price for that. Heyward, to me, may not have a 10-sack season, but is a pretty scary dude. I think Metcalf certainly is his own threat if we can't let this guy beat us. That's kind of how I define maybe that's scary. We can't let this guy be the guy that writes the story. So those are some names that I would throw out there. But I understand the point that, Pittsburgh, especially with Watt, disappointing last year and having a down year by his standards, not having that fear of God player.
Right. I agree with the sentiment overall. Are there numerous players that would keep opposing defensive coordinators or all offensive coordinators up at night. I mean, look, I'll tell you this. I mean, for what Aaron Rodgers is at this point, you better not have any lapse. You better not make any mistakes. I mean, he's obviously still good at deciphering coverages and all like that, and generally getting the ball where it needs to go. Now, look, he still has the arm strength, but as we talked about, being able to push the football down the field. Technically, is Aaron Rodgers a guy that scares you? Not at this point of his career. DK Metcalf, a byproduct of what Aaron Rodgers can do. I really think it's more defensively when you look at this team. Jalen Ramsey's still a very imposing player. You mentioned Cameron Heyward, TJ Watt. I guess I get the sentiment overall, at least when you whittle out whatever 53-man roster you want to choose at this point of the offseason here. Are there a lot of individual players that would scare opposing teams? I think it's more of the collective than it is individuality.
Who would you put though in that they scare the opponent category? If you had to
TJ
give
Watt,
me individuals,
Watt,
anybody
Watt,
else?
Watt.
Just Watt?
Yeah, I think Watt's the guy that, especially if I'm an offensive coordinator, I'm making sure that we don't let look. Who's the game wrecker? TJ Watt, right? That's a guy that can really shift an outcome of a game with 2 or 3 plays. So that's the guy I think on either side of football that I would designate.
Fair. How many do you think Baltimore has? How many would you put in that scare you?
I mean, Derrick Henry Derrick Henry, every time he touches the football, is scary. I think Lamar Jackson, even 69th on the NFL list, that is a guy that on any given snap can really change a game. So, and that's just offense with them.
Anybody else you put on that list, offense or defense?
I mean, Hamilton on the defensive side of football is a big, a difference maker with them. I'm trying to go through the defense in my head overall. I think less so really on the defensive side of football right now. But I mean, look, Derrick Henry, I don't care where you're at on the football field, that guy can go 92 to the house.
Sure. So would you put Hamilton as joining Jackson and Henry?
Not on the same level, no.
Okay, so you'd have Jackson and Henry for Baltimore then.
Right.
What about Cincinnati?
Oh man, I mean Higgins and Chase certainly can change the game. Joe Burrow, if he stays healthy, can certainly impact games. And I mean, how many more do you need? I mean, obviously defensively, they're going through a time right now.
Would you put Dexter Lawrence in that scare you bucket?
I mean, look, I mean, he could definitely make some plays. I mean, he could definitely get in the backfield and cause disruption and chaos.
So you would put him in there?
When I think of the Bengals, I think of the 3 that I just mentioned there. So no, not right off the cuff would I put Lawrence in there.
And then Cleveland, Sands, Myles Garrett, anybody in that category?
I mean, they're inside linebacker that what's his name?
Carson Schlesinger.
But even so, I mean, he's still got to prove it a couple of years in a row. Nobody really on that team that's coming to mind where I think, oh my God, scary guy.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, there's some good players. There's Denzel Ward, there's Schlesinger, but nobody now that Garrett's gone. So you got Pittsburgh with 1, you got Baltimore with 2, and Cincinnati with 3, Cleveland with 0. I'm not sure what to make of that information, but there's a little inner divisional exercise.
All right. Let's go one more from Ryan Kelly. First off, I just want to say you fellows covered the Steelers better than anyone. All right. Thanks, Ryan.
Thank you.
He says, and I listened to a ton of Steelers coverage. He says, I wanted to pick your brain on our running backs. I'm really intrigued by this position group. He says, Mike McCarthy raves about how Jaylen Warren and Rico Dowdle are true 3-down backs who don't force him to change personnel groups. He says Warren is a tackle-breaking machine in space. Dowdle is more of a north-south grinder, fall forward for more yards type guy. Since both appear to be 3-down backs, how do you see them splitting the high-value touches based on your knowledge and tape study, who do you think gets the nod on third down passing situation and who gets the goal line work? That's an interesting way to look at it, especially when he has in here high value touches.
Yeah, but my inclination is that Dowdle's going to be more 1A to Warren's 1B. I do think in passing situations, well, I think Dowdle can cash, and he's got a bit of a track record there. I think Warren's going to be more of the third down role, as a really good receiver, as a good pass protector. Maybe took a step back last year, but I think he can still pass protect well. Goal line can be a little bit of a product of who's fresh. If Warren just had 10, not 10, but 5 straight plays, and they might bring in somebody else and rotate down there. I think both can be effective short yardage backs because they got some size, some power. Warren's a bowling ball. He's not tall, but he's stout, and Dowdle's is a pretty big guy overall. So I'm not sure quite who will have the edge there. But I think Dowdle, just the McCarthy connection is going to give him a bit of the edge overall.
Yeah, as the season wears on, I think we'll see a little bit of a, 55-45 split getting into the second half of the season with Dowdle probably having the upper hand.
Yeah, I mean, I don't want to get too bogged down in exact split 60-40, 55-45. It'll ebb and flow. And, I think Rodgers likes Jalen Warren a ton. And if Rodgers pines and says, sorry, you and Rico have history, Coach McCarthy, but Warren's kind of my guy, then that could dictate things. So it'll ebb and flow. I mean, Dowdle's career has been pretty hot and cold. He's had big weeks and then quiet weeks. So it can be hard to project things out week to week or exact splits. I just say that Dowdle probably will have the overall advantage in terms of snaps and carries by a little bit.
All right, both guys can give you the 10-yard run, probably with some regularity throughout the season, but neither guy has really presented themselves to be the explosive 20-yard guy, like the Jamar Gibbs or along those lines there. So I think that's another aspect of the explosive offense. And look, depending on what you want to call explosive runs, 10 yards or 20 yards, the fact of the matter that 20-yard gains, no matter how they're gained, can really impact games. So you really do wonder how this team can maybe up their explosive runs of 20 yards or more, and can they get enough of the 10 or more yard runs to kind of offset what they might not get in a 20-yard category?
Yeah, you're right. Obviously, they're not special athletes the way that Gibbs, as you said, Derrick Henry, Bijan Robinson, who Pittsburgh will see week 1, are. But I think a lot of those long runs come from, tertiary blocking, receivers, tight ends, throwing a block and springing a play. I think Pat Freiermuth had a really good block on one of Warren's 45-yard touchdown runs last year. I mean, he had 2 against Detroit, and so I think he's got the ability to bust off some big runs. The burst is there. The long speed might not be fantastic. So I think a lot of big runs come from just other guys putting their hand in the pile to block second level, third level defenders, and that's how you create a lot of those. I think Pittsburgh's in a better place there.
All right, I lied. One more. Travis Tallman writes in, Steelers conditioning test question. He says, hello, Dave and Alex. Do we know the details of the standard conditioning test the Steelers normally do upon arrival at training camp? I'm old enough to remember when Jermaine Stevens failed his test and was always curious as to what that test entails. Thank you and can't wait for the season. Travis in Fort Knox, Kentucky. I don't know if we've even talked about what the research is or what related to Mike McCarthy and what potentially his conditioning tests are.
Yeah, I don't know. And obviously we're not there for that. I think it's a more private event and it can vary a little bit, but I imagine each team's conditioning test is generally the same. Hopefully the joke I'll get out of the way. No pushing sleds by quarterbacks this year. I mean, generally, and I've heard a couple players talk about it. I think I'll under Tomlin, but you're running some gassers in its time. You have to run, so many gassers and cover this distance in X amount of time. I'm reading one. This is from the Ravens in 2020. Just to give an example, I'm going to read it verbatim here. Players must run a total of 900 yards in 6 legs. Each set consists of 25 yards out and back 3 times. They must finish the heat of 150 yards under a designated time, 32 seconds for the line, 29 seconds for tight ends and linebackers, 27 seconds for receivers and running backs and DBs. If you go over that time in any of the 6 legs, you flunk the test and you have to take it over. The break between each set is 64 seconds. And so How grueling is it? McCarthy versus Tomlin versus other teams? I don't know, but generally their gassers run under a certain amount of time and framework, and that's how the tests go.
Run a quick search for Mike McCarthy Dallas Cowboys conditioning test or Cowboys conditioning test.
All right, or Dallas. I mean, we'll see. I don't know what they did. I will try to see what this brings. I don't know what will come up here, if anything. Let's see. I am not seeing anything immediate show up here. I'll try to look at this random New York Times
While
article.
you do that, it will be interesting maybe during Mike McCarthy's initial press conference of training camp if he's asked what his conditioning test entail.
Yeah, I am not finding
Striking out.
Yeah, I mean, there's not a ton of information about that in general. There's stuff about Eddie Lacy being fat, but that's not McCarthy saying that. Just that was a story back then. I can't find much, but they're generally, like I said, their gassers run under a certain amount of time, and that's the general, I think, gist of how conditioning tests go.
All right, that wraps it up. Thank you for the questions from Ryan, Arthur, Neil, and Travis. So we're about 2-hour mark. The perfect time to get out of here on this Wednesday. If you want to follow me on Twitter/X at Steelers Depot, Alex at Alex_Kozora. Follow the show at Terrible Podcast. Email the show, theterriblepodcast@gmail.com. If you like what we do and want to donate, SteelersDepot.com. Hit that donate button. And if you'd like an ad-free version of the site, SteelersDepot.com. Hit the ad-free button and follow the directions that way. Alex and I will be back on Friday going through more 90 and 30 series players. We're going to have Joe Clark on, get his thoughts on several things related to the 2026 Steelers ahead of training camp getting underway in less than 2 weeks from now. So, as always, thanks for listening to the Terrible Podcast with Dave and Alex.